right now, Rod. Can we go to the Vaqueros hotline?
Yes, sir.
He is played 4 years as a bruising running back for Iowa State. Played for Paul Rhodes back from 2010 to 2013. Scored 14 touchdowns in his career. Now he's a football analyst doing great TV and radio podcasts. Number 32 when he played for Iowa State. We go to him to talk some Iowa State, Texas. He is on the Vaqueros hotline. Jeff, good morning, my friend. Thanks for being with us. Appreciate you doing it.
Yeah, my pleasure. It's good to be on. Talking a little Longhorns Cyclones for maybe the last time in a while.
Yeah, good bet. It's the last time. Now, you played for Paul Rhodes at Iowa State, and we do appreciate you doing this. But give me your thoughts on Matt Campbell and where he's at with this program, what you've seen as an alum and someone who played for that program. What have you liked about Matt Campbell, and what does you think Matt Campbell still struggles with that program?
Yeah, what's amazing is, as a program that – here's a fun fact for all the Longhorn fans. Iowa State had, prior to Paul Rhodes getting there, had 3 bowl wins of any kind ever prior to Rhodes getting there. And since then, the tides really changed. Now, Rhodes for his first few years got everything kind of – we went to 3 and 5 years. We got some wins. We, had some impressive things happen, but then sort of trailed off. And then when Campbell got here, Iowa State's been to 6 bowl games now that they're bowl eligible after beating BYU last week. They've been to 6 bowl games in 7 years, which is about as many as they've been to in the entire history before. So Iowa State has not been a good football program up until Coach Campbell got there. And the thing that I really like is when you're trying to build a program from where Iowa State's program was, which is you're hoping that, when you look at a team like, let's say this Texas team came to Ames in 2006, you're looking at that film going, we have to play perfect to beat them. Well, the confidence of success over time makes it so that doesn't feel like you have to play perfect to win because, as anyone who plays sports knows, if you think that you have to play perfect, you won't be, which makes you play worse. So being able to play relaxed and confident that you have enough talent, you have enough success, you have enough coaching and preparation that you can just go out there and play and win. I think that's what Coach Campbell has done well and has brought to Ames. I think the thing that is a little, I would say as an alum and as a someone who likes watching Iowa State win, early season, they a lot of times will take a bit to get going where the Iowa game comes to mind. It's always the second week of the season. He's lost every game against Iowa except one. And so 1-6 against Iowa isn't fun, but by the time you get to October, November, they're at their best because they consistently get better over the season. So I'd like to see more September success, but 6 bowl games in 7 years and being in competition for a conference title in the end of the season, you can't really complain too much.
Hey, Jeff, it's pretty, rare and out of character for an Iowa State player to talk a little trash, provide some bulletin board material before the Texas game, but it happened in this instance with Jared Hufford, I believe is his name. What are your thoughts about the trash talk? Is this just the quiet part being said out loud by the Iowa State players, more the messaging that's usually in the meeting room and now being thrown out there to the media?
Well, I mean, look, if you were playing Texas and you were in Iowa State, what would you think? Like, you can't, as an underdog, you can't go into it thinking like, man, these guys are so good, we can't ever beat them. So you have to have, no matter who you're playing, you have to feel that confidence that you're going to beat them. And like I said, Coach Campbell's kind of brought success to go with that confidence, so it's there. So, in any game against any dog versus a favorite, especially one that's as historically strong as a Texas or an Alabama or those types of programs are, you do kind of feel that. Usually you don't say that to the media because you don't want the other guys to hear that, but I don't think that that's necessarily a rare thing. Independent of Texas, Oklahoma, whatever the other programs are, like the feeling of these guys are, I think the line that sticks out the most to me in that kind of bulletin board material is these guys are humans too. And I think that's how you sort of have to lock at it as a guy who is a dog. And, Hufford's he's a senior, so he's been through these before, feels confident. I wouldn't want to give these defensive tackles more juice to the game because they might be the best in the country, but that's still something that, I would say that's the feeling that you kind of have to have So, yeah, you just usually don't say that to the media.
Yeah, say it out loud, and I'm sure it's all over the Texas locker room as well, which is good. And Iowa State nearly won here last year. I think they felt like they should have gotten out of Austin with a victory. 27-24 was the final. You couldn't agree more about Matt Campbell and early struggles, but he cut his teeth at Mount Union, and he had a playoff there. I came out of the high school ranks, and you're always trying to be your best in November and December and beyond at those levels. So maybe that's the obvious reason or the reason, but at the same time, they do get better, and this team has gotten better. And so any Longhorn fan there that kind of dismissed them after they got clobbered by Oklahoma in early October better be paying attention to the improvement they've made here into November. Where have you seen their best improvement, Jeff, here as they approach the final 2 games of the regular season?
Well, I mean, it's very much on the offensive side of the ball. The defense has always been pretty stout. Now, the game against Oklahoma was a little bit of an outlier. They had the secondary that Iowa State has. You probably toss a coin between Texas and Texas and Iowa State as far as the best secondary in the conference, because between TJ Tampa and Malik Verdun there's probably 3 to 4 NFL guys in both secondaries. So against Oklahoma, they were down 2 of them. So you're out a couple guys that are going to be your studs. So with the defense being fully healthy, when they've been fully healthy, they've been good all year. But offensively, the first 3 games of the year, they were trying to run. Iowa State was trying to run what they ran last year, because they have legitimately 5 tight ends that can play. But the offensive line isn't this like mauler offensive line. They're more technical, so they're really good in pass protection because they can communicate pretty well. But they're not great in just, hey, get out of the way, we're running the ball. So when they tried to run this like power offense with young tight ends, there's not enough space. You have young players everywhere. After the Ohio game, they looked in the mirror and said, okay, what is this offensive unit actually do well? And they started spreading everything out more. They started throwing more on early downs. They started giving RPOs to a redshirt freshman quarterback that they normally don't do. Like, they reserve those for like a Brock Purdy type player. So the offensive and the openness of the offense, that's kind of like at its peak. Now, granted, you're playing Kansas and BYU, and they lost the Kansas game because of a couple weird plays. But in the second half of the Kansas game into the first half of the BYU game, which is basically the last 4 quarters that the starters have played, because the second, it was 31-7 at halftime against BYU, so they didn't really do anything in the second half. So the last 4 quarters that Iowa State's offense has played, they've scored on 11 of 13 drives. So This offense has got to the point where they're clicking really well, because the young guys have matured enough throughout the season. So, like, here's another crazy statistic. Because the whole gambling thing this past offseason, they lose a quarterback, a tight end, a running back, they lose all this depth. They've had 1 upperclassman receive a carry this year. That's not a senior. That's 1 person, junior or senior, 1 upperclassman receive a carry this year, and that was a kicker on a fake field goal. So every offensive player who has received a carry this year has been an underclassman. And if you look at the receiving core, they will graduate exactly 0 wide receivers. They will graduate 1 tight end. So this group is so young, but they've gotten through the course of the season substantially better at just understanding what they can and can't do, and seeing reads and understanding where the field is. So that's the thing, the offensive side of the ball, that they've gotten so much better throughout the year.
Tell me about this young running back, Abu Sama III.
So he's actually from my high school. So Southeast Polk,
Wow.
He's the same, the left tackle. So Southeast Polk, they're going, get a little Southeast Polk shout out here. It's a suburb. It's a kind of a rural suburb of Des Moines. And the guys that they've graduated off of that team in the past couple of years. So Caden Proctor is the starting left tackle at Alabama as a true freshman. He was on the same team as this kid, Abu Sama, who's a running back for him. And then the year before that, the starting safety at Iowa, his name is Xavier Wongpa, he was at Southeast Polk. So the past 2 high school teams, they've graduated 2 5-stars, and then this kid. So to know about Sama, the Drake Relays are the biggest track and field meet in the Midwest. So Illinois, Minnesota, whatever. And high schoolers, if you qualify, are allowed to compete in there. He has the high school division Drake Relays record for a long jump. He is a 26-foot long jumper. So that explosiveness that he has just oozes out of him. So the thing that he doesn't quite understand yet is where to press his track, or when to make the cuts necessarily. But if he gets in the open field, again, he's a 26-foot long jumper. I think they did like someone puts like a speed tracker thing on him, and you can say, how fast he's running. He was jogging at 21 miles an hour. So like this kid is an explosive athlete, and as he gets to mature and understand like how to play running back and not just run around, he's got some serious Breece Hall vibes. Now, I'm not saying he's going to be Breece Hall, but he's got some serious Breece Hall vibes.
Yeah, that'll be a problem. As Rod said, the last few games he's averaging
good
like
on film,
10 yards a carry the last couple of games, and 11 of 13 scoring drives. They've gotten hot at the right time, and the defense has been good and now healthy, and that's what the Longhorns will challenge or face coming up on Saturday night in Ames. It'll be a blackout. It's going to be a rabid crowd. Hey, Jeff Woody is with us, former running back at Iowa State, now doing great media and podcast. You can find him on Twitter, by the way. He's a great, easy follow. JWoody32 is where you're going to find him. Hey, Jeff, when you look at Texas, obviously they're top 7 team in the country. They're 9-1. What is most concerning for you in the matchup for the Cyclones against this Texas team?
It's a defensive line, man. Like that's the thing that gives me as an Iowa State as an analyst, more than an Iowa State fan, as an analyst, the damage that the interior specifically of that defensive line. That's the thing that it's kind of no one else that Iowa State has played this year has that much talent. Like you look at the the other position groups that you'd say the wide receivers. When Iowa State secondary has been healthy, they've been really good. And so it's going to be sort of a, you punch me, I punch back. Xavier Worthy is going to catch a 18-yard pass, then TJ Tampa is going to break one up. And then, that's going to be a fairly fair fight that I feel confident in the talent of the secondary to at least hold their own. It's the defensive line of Texas, like watching that Kansas State game, I think Kansas State ran for like 1 yard per carry because they just couldn't. There's so much push that comes from an interior offense or defensive line. So you have to execute so well everywhere else because you're not going to be able to move those guys around. I think that's the thing that, like in years past, Texas has had skill players. Last year they have the best running back in the country. But you didn't have a defense that was able to match that. This defense for Texas, especially the front four, is that's the special part of this team to me.
Yeah, it's hard to match up with. And that's why Rod asked about the guard, talking about we've seen better, kind of psyching himself out for it. But it should be fun. Yeah, we were getting geeked over that K-State game, and they held that group to almost nothing on the ground, had to abandon it. If that's the case, Jeff, and if they have to abandon the run game a little bit here, can Rocco Becht, what can he do with his arm? Because I know last year they were 9 of 15 on third down in this game against Texas. We're able to convert a lot with Xavier Hutchinson. Can they win this game through the air? Does there have to be a ground game with it for Iowa State?
Well, they can't just like step back and throw it 55 times, but they do have the ability. They're really talented across the board. I think the guy you want to look out for is Jalen Knoll, who actually had a big game last year too. He's a guy who he is our Jordan Whittington, where a guy who you look at the other guys are going to have the big 70-yard plays, but you look down at the stat sheet and you're like, oh, geez, he got 9 catches for 85 yards. Where'd that come from? Like, that's the kind of play that Jalen Knoll does. And so he's a guy that is going to be – they try and motion him and match him up against safeties, against linebackers. And then the other guy that's really starting to come on strong is Benjamin Bramer. He's a true freshman tight end. He's 6'7". He's like 245. Once he gets a little bit more meat on his bones, he's going to be an NFL prospect type guy. They're probably not going to just straight up throw it down the field, but if you can, their goal is to probably sustain drives to the point where you can get, instead of having a one high safety, you push the other one back because he has to, and then you can potentially start running the ball. So I would imagine they're going to be more of a pass to open up the run situation, and by that I mean getting an outside linebacker matched up on Jalen Knoll, or getting a safety matched up on a 6'7" tight end. Like finding those matchups where you can get 6 yards on first down on a hitch or on an interior route or body somebody up. So they can do that. The only problem with those is when that doesn't work, now the clock is stopped and it's 2nd and 10. So that's the thing that they're going to have to fight against, is making sure that you are efficient when you do that, which they can be, but they can also that backs you into a corner pretty quickly. So yes, they can, but you got to be, the details get a lot tighter in that game plan.
All right. Hey, Jeff, we appreciate it, man. That's good stuff. The insights behind the Cyclone curtain we like to get from a former player who watches that team very closely and knows ball. Hey, Jeff, thanks so much, man. Appreciate doing it. We'll check in again soon when we get a chance, okay?
Thanks, Jeff.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Jeff Woody. Follow him on Twitter at JWoody32. former Iowa State running back, now doing analysis for TV and radio and podcasts, all kinds of good stuff. Learned a lot there, Ron. Learned some stuff.
Yeah, man. We talked about how this offense is trending, and I love the stat he gave that if you take away the second half of that blowout win they just had and basically the first half of their previous game, and you take those quarters where the starters have been playing, they're trending in the right way. They've scored, 11 of their 12 drives, he
Touchdowns
said?
on 11 of 13 drives. That was against Kansas and against BYU last week in Provo. That was 31-7 at the half.
So they're trending.